When my son grabbed my hand and threw me out of the house, it was raining heavily outside. He shouted in my face and said, "Mom, you are a burden on this house now. Get out of here." He didn't know that the company he was going to interview for was owned by none other than me. The house from which he pushed me out, the original ownership papers were still kept in my old trunk. My only mistake was that I had hidden my wealth to test my children's love, and today, he had failed that test. Rain blurred the world into streaks of gray as the door slammed shut behind me. The sound echoed louder than the thunder, louder than my own breathing. My shoes slipped on the wet steps, and for a moment I thought I might fall, but I steadied myself against the rusted railing. Inside that house, my son stood dry and angry, convinced he had finally freed himself of a burden. My name is Eleanor Whitmore. To the world, I was an aging widow with modest savings and outdated clothes. To my children, I was a mother who had outlived her usefulness. And to myself, standing in the rain that night with a single suitcase and an old wooden trunk, I was a woman confronting the cost of a lifelong decision, hiding the truth to protect a test I believed mattered more than money. The rain soaked through my coat as I walked down the driveway. Each step felt heavier than the last, not because of my age, but because of the memories tied to that house. I had bought it 32 years earlier, when my husband, Richard, was still alive and our children were small. Back then, laughter spilled from every window. We believed love would always be enough. Richard had been the visionary. While others chased flashy investments, he built quiet foundations: real estate, logistics, later technology. He believed in ownership over appearance. "Let the results speak," he used to say. When he passed away suddenly from a heart condition, the weight of everything fell onto my shoulders: the companies, the employees, the future of our children. I made a choice then, a decision that would define the rest of my life. I hid our wealth, not because I was ashamed, and not because I was afraid. I had seen what easy money did to families. I wanted my children, Daniel and Claire, to grow with discipline, humility, and gratitude. I wanted them to love me, not what I could give them. So I simplified our lives. I sold our luxury home and moved us into something modest. I dressed plainly. I told them their father had left us comfortable, but nothing extravagant. At first, it worked. Daniel grew into a driven young man, ambitious and sharp-tongued. Claire was softer, kinder, but easily influenced. As they grew older, the world hardened them in different ways. Daniel saw success as survival. Claire saw security as love. And I watched. Quietly. I never denied them education or opportunity. I paid for good schools, tutors, and later college, always under the explanation of careful savings and a few lucky investments. I wanted them to struggle just enough to value effort. What I didn't anticipate was how easily effort turns into entitlement when patience runs out. The night Daniel threw me out didn't come out of nowhere. It was the result of years of small cuts. It started after I fell ill 2 winters ago. Nothing dramatic, just a weakness in my legs, a tremor in my hands. The doctors recommended rest and assistance. Daniel insisted I move in with him. At the time, I believed it was love. I sold my small apartment and brought only what mattered: clothes, a few books, and my old trunk, the one Daniel always joked about, calling it my museum of useless memories. He never asked what was inside. At first, things were civil. Daniel's wife, Meredith, was polite in the way people are polite to strangers. She smiled without warmth and spoke kindly, without listening. Their home was modern, expensive-looking, but strangely hollow. Everything was white, glass, and steel, no family photos, no warmth. As weeks turned into months, patience wore thin. I cooked too slowly. I asked too many questions. I forgot where things were kept. Meredith sighed loudly. Daniel avoided eye contact. I became an inconvenience they tolerated, not a mother they cherished. The arguments began quietly, behind closed doors, then openly over dinner. "We can't keep doing this," Meredith said one night, not even looking at me. "Your mother needs professional care. We're not equipped." Daniel rubbed his temples. "Mom, You have to understand, we have our own lives. I nodded, apologized, shrank. But that wasn't enough. The breaking point came on the morning of Daniel's interview, the one that would supposedly change everything. He had been unemployed for nearly a year, jumping from failed startup to failed promise. This interview was with a powerful holding company expanding aggressively. He was nervous, restless, already angry before I spoke a word. I asked him if he wanted breakfast. He snapped, "I don't have time for this." I flinched, apologized again, and tried to move out of his way. My foot caught on the rug. I fell. The sound of my body hitting the floor was dull, final. Pain shot through my hip. Meredith rolled her eyes. "This is exactly what I mean," she said. "Drama every day." Something in Daniel snapped then. Not guilt, not concern, but frustration. He pulled me up by the arm, too hard, and dragged me toward the door. "Enough, Mom," he shouted. "You're a burden on this house now. Get out." I looked into his eyes, searching for the boy who used to hold my hand crossing the street. I found nothing but resentment. The rain started as he pushed me outside. And now, standing in it alone, I realized the test was over. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I simply picked up my suitcase, pulled the trunk behind me, and walked. That night, I stayed in a small roadside motel, the kind that smells like detergent and loneliness. I dried my clothes with a hairdryer and tended to my bruises in silence. When morning came, I opened my trunk for the first time in years. Inside were documents, neatly organized, untouched by time. Property deeds, share certificates, legal papers, the original ownership documents of the very house Daniel now lived in, transferred to my name long before his marriage, long before his arrogance. And beneath them, a thin folder labeled Hawthorne Group Holdings, the company Daniel was interviewing for that very morning. I closed the trunk and stared at the ceiling. For the first time, I asked myself a question I had avoided for decades. Had I been testing them or punishing myself? By noon, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Mrs. Whitmore, this is James Holloway from Hawthorne Group. We're confirming your attendance at today's executive board meeting. Your son, Daniel Whitmore, is scheduled for final interview at 3 p.m. Please advise." I smiled, not with satisfaction, but with clarity. "Yes," I typed back. "I'll be there." I checked out of the motel, changed into the only formal outfit I had kept hidden in the bottom of my suitcase, and called for a car. As it arrived, the rain stopped. The clouds parted just enough for sunlight to touch the road ahead. Daniel believed he was walking into the opportunity of his life. He had no idea he was walking into the truth. And this time, I would not hide. The Hawthorne Group headquarters rose like a monument of glass and steel against the clearing sky. Sunlight reflected sharply off its surface, as if the building itself were awake and watching. As the car slowed at the entrance, I felt no fear, only a strange calm, the kind that comes when a long-delayed moment finally arrives. Inside, the lobby buzzed with quiet authority. Executives moved with purpose, assistants spoke in hushed tones, and the scent of polished marble and fresh coffee filled the air. A young receptionist looked up as I approached. "Mrs. Whitmore?" she asked, eyes widening slightly as she recognized the name on her tablet. "They're expecting you. The boardroom is ready." She didn't ask for identification. No one ever did here. As I walked down the corridor, memories followed me. Late nights reviewing contracts after the children were asleep, early mornings negotiating acquisitions while pretending to be just a consultant. For decades, I had stayed in the background, letting others take the spotlight. Hawthorne Group had grown into a global powerhouse under that quiet leadership. And today, my son was about to sit across from me, without realizing it. The boardroom doors were open when I arrived. Long glass walls overlooked the city, and the table gleamed with precision. James Holloway stood as soon as he saw me. "Eleanor," he said warmly, "it's good to see you." "Likewise, James," I replied, taking my seat at the head of the table, the seat I had always occupied, even when I attended remotely. Other board members nodded respectfully. No introductions were needed. To them, I wasn't a frail old woman or a burden. I was the founder, the silent architect, the owner. At exactly 2:55 p.m., the door opened again. Daniel walked in. He wore his best suit, slightly wrinkled, his tie too tight. Confidence battled with anxiety on his face. He smiled politely at the room, eyes scanning faces, then stopping abruptly on me. For a brief second, his expression froze. Confusion flickered. Then disbelief. Then something close to panic. I met his gaze calmly, as if we were strangers meeting for the first time. "Please," James said, unaware of the storm brewing, "have a seat, Mr. Whitmore. We'll begin shortly." Daniel sat down slowly, never taking his eyes off me. His mouth opened as if to speak, then closed. Perhaps he thought exhaustion or stress was playing tricks on him. After all, the woman he had thrown into the rain couldn't possibly be here, couldn't possibly belong. The interview began. James led with questions about leadership, vision, adaptability. Daniel answered smoothly at first, reciting rehearsed phrases, buzzwords borrowed from podcasts and failed ventures. I listened without interruption, my hands folded neatly on the table. Then the questions turned sharper. "How do you handle responsibility toward those dependent on you?" another board member asked. Daniel straightened. "I believe accountability is earned. People must pull their own weight." I raised an eyebrow but said nothing. "And loyalty?" I asked finally, my voice steady, controlled. Daniel swallowed. "Loyalty is important, of course, but it shouldn't come at the cost of progress." The room was quiet now. I leaned forward slightly. "And family?" He hesitated. "Family can sometimes hold you back if boundaries aren't enforced." James glanced between us, sensing tension he couldn't place. I nodded slowly. "Interesting." The interview concluded soon after. Daniel's answers unraveled under scrutiny. His confidence faded. When James finally thanked him and asked him to wait outside, Daniel stood on unsteady legs. As he reached the door, I spoke again. "Daniel, please stay." Everyone turned. James looked surprised but deferred. The door closed behind him. Daniel faced me fully now, his voice trembling. "Mom, what is this?" I stood. For the first time in years, I didn't feel small. "My name," I said calmly, "is Eleanor Whitmore. I am the founder and majority owner of Hawthorne Group Holdings. And I am also the woman you called a burden yesterday." Silence felt like a weight. Daniel's face drained of color. That's not possible." I gestured to James, who nodded. "It's all documented," he said gently. Daniel stumbled back into his chair. "You hid everything," Daniel whispered. "All this time." "Yes," I replied. "I hid my wealth, not my love." Tears welled in his eyes, not from remorse, but from shock. "Why would you do that to us?" I looked at him carefully. "To see who you would become without it." No one spoke. The city outside seemed distant, unreal. "You failed the interview," I said softly. "Not because of your resume. Not because of your skills, but because of who you revealed yourself to be." Daniel shook his head. "Please, Mom, I didn't mean." I raised a hand. "You meant every word you said in that house. You meant every look of irritation, every sigh, every moment you chose comfort over compassion." His shoulders collapsed. "Where did you go last night?" "A motel," I answered. "Alone. In the rain." James looked away. I took a breath. "This company will not hire you. And the house you live in, legally, it belongs to me." Daniel looked up sharply. "You wouldn't." "I would," I said. "And I will." Tears spilled freely now. "What about Claire?" he asked desperately. "She doesn't know any of this." "I know," I said. "And she never treated me like a burden." That evening, I went to Claire's apartment. She opened the door with a surprised smile that quickly turned to concern when she saw my bruises. "Mom, what happened?" She didn't wait for an answer. She pulled me inside, wrapped me in a blanket, and made tea with shaking hands. I told her everything. She cried, not because of money, but because of guilt. "I should have noticed," she said over and over. "I should have done more." "You did enough," I told her. You loved me. In the weeks that followed, things changed quickly. Daniel and Meredith were served legal notice. They moved out within 30 days. The house stood empty again, quiet, echoing, waiting. Claire moved in with me instead, not because she needed to, but because she wanted to. Together, we restored the house, room by room, memory by memory. I transferred a portion of my wealth into a foundation for elder care, ensuring no one else would ever be thrown into the rain by those they trusted most. Daniel tried to contact me, calls, messages, apologies heavy with regret. I read them all. I answered none. Because forgiveness is not forgetting. And love does not mean surrendering dignity. One afternoon, as I sat by the window watching sunlight fall across the garden, Claire asked quietly, "Do you regret hiding the truth for so long?" I thought of the test, of the rain, of the boardroom. "No," I said finally, "because now I know the truth. The greatest inheritance I could ever leave behind wasn't money. It was the lesson that love, when tested, always reveals who we truly are." You just heard a story of betrayal, survival, and quiet revenge. If it left you thinking, hit like, share it forward, and subscribe for more true emotional stories that'll stay with you long after they end. Every click helps another story find its voice.